During the Behind the Headlines Holiday Homicide series, we'll be covering several cases that took place in December. While the holidays should be a happy time for people to come together, these stories prove that's not always the case. For Effingham County resident Elwyn Crocker Sr., Christmas had always been a special time of the year. Not only was it his birthday, but he annually dressed up as Santa Claus for local families to meet as well. On December 20th, 2018, police arrived at Elwyn's home to conduct a wellness check on his children, EJ, Mary, and James Crocker. Being so close to Christmas, you'd expect to find siblings anticipating presents filled with holiday cheer. However, what police actually found was a literal house of horrors. While he did his best to be seen as jolly old Saint Nick, it turns out that Elwyn, as well as other adults in the home, were nothing more than sick and twisted sadists. To uncover what happened to the Crocker children, we need to go behind the headlines. It's a common belief that physical and sexual abuse tends to run in the family, even though most victims are able to break the cycle. Recent studies have shown that between 30 and 40% of people who are abused as children go on to become abusers themselves. While that's not an excuse, it may help to explain how Elwyn Crocker ended up the way he did. In the late 60s, Mary Alice Parrott was living in Maine when she married a man named Elwyn Crocker. Now, just a heads up, this can get kind of confusing because there are a lot of Elwyns in this case, but this particular Elwyn won't be very relevant going forward. He and Mary Alice were only married for a few years before getting divorced, but they did have 2 sons together. The first one is Elwyn John Crocker, which is the Elwyn we're discussing in this story. He was born on Christmas Day in 1967, and his brother Jamie Lee Crocker was born on December 27th in 1971. After the divorce, Mary Alice moved back to her home in Columbia, South Carolina, where she raised the boys surrounded by her parents and extended family. In 1975, Mary married her second husband, Larry McCoy, who was said to be physically and emotionally abusive. According to family members, this abuse was mostly directed toward Elwyn, and in 1979, social services got involved when he was seen with a black eye and busted nose. Elwyn's younger cousin named Israel Pattinson frequented the family's home as a child and recalls Larry hitting Elwyn with paddles and demeaning him in horrible ways. Another family member stated that on one occasion, Larry actually hung Elwyn upside down in a tree wearing only his underwear. After social services investigated the allegations, Larry actually admitted to beating Elwyn. A judge ordered him to participate in parental counseling, but according to Mary, he never did. They ultimately got divorced in 1986, but after suffering this abuse for nearly 10 years, the damage was seemingly already done. Israel said that his cousin Elwyn grew into a cruel teenager who even sexually molested him repeatedly for years. Looking back, he believes that Elwyn wanted to dominate people who were more vulnerable than him in response to being dominated by Larry. Elwyn went on to graduate from Dreyer High School in 1989 and then worked various jobs to make ends meet. Between 1999 and 2000, he started dating a woman named Linda Denny. On November 5th, 2001, they had a son who they named, you guessed it, Elwyn. He began going by EJ, and a few years later, on December 20th, 2004, they had a daughter named Mary after Elwyn's mother. I guess passing on names is really important to this family, but just to make everything clear, we've made this family tree. Not much is known about what happened with Elwyn and Linda's relationship, other than that she essentially abandoned him and the children. From then on, Linda was reported to be homeless and living in various tents with her new boyfriend. Elwyn took Linda to court for child support, but with no job, she frequently fell behind, and he did his best to raise the children on his own. However, this wouldn't last long because he quickly moved on and entered a relationship with a woman named Rebecca Self. On November 1st, 2007, they had a son together named James. Raising 3 children isn't easy for anyone, but James was also born with cerebral palsy and required a lot of extra medical care. They were able to get supplemental security income or SSI checks for him, but the money was still tight. Despite these challenges, the family of 5 was happy for a while, but things changed in April of 2008 when baby James was just 5 months old. Elwyn was known for not liking getting woken up. I mean, no one does, but he really hated it and would lose his temper if he was woken up out of a dead sleep. Well, according to Rebecca, one afternoon she was trying to feed baby James and accidentally woke up Elwyn while he was taking a nap. She says he flew into a rage and accused her of feeding James the wrong food. He allegedly snatched the bottle before grabbing her by the throat and pressing her back against the window. This all occurred while Rebecca was still holding James, prompting her to call 911. When police arrived, the baby had a large red mark on his head and was taken to the hospital to be checked out. The next day, Elwyn told an investigator that the mark on James's head happened when he was trying to get the bottle away from Rebecca before she could give him the wrong food. He ultimately wasn't charged with anything, which really upset Rebecca because she felt like the police weren't taking what happened seriously. In an attempt to get James out of harm's way and to get Elwyn charged, 9 days later, Rebecca showed back up to the police station. This time, she had what appeared to be a horrible-looking black eye and claimed that Elwyn had punched her. However, an officer investigating the situation felt like the bruise looked suspicious, and he brought her a wet washcloth and told her to wipe her eye. It turns out the black eye was actually just makeup, which the officer said ruined her credibility. Rebecca and Elwyn ended up getting into another altercation, but this time she was charged with assaulting him. Even though Rebecca was adamant that Elwyn had assaulted her more than once and was the aggressor since she tried to fabricate evidence, no one believed her. Elwyn even testified in court that Rebecca tried to kill baby James and he was ultimately given full custody. A few years later, Elwyn met and started dating a woman named Candace Wright. Even though she was 17 years younger than him, the two apparently hit it off because they went on to get married in December of 2011. Those who knew Elwyn said that after they got married, they abruptly moved to Georgia, where Candace's mother was from, in March of 2012. They rented a trailer in Rincon, located in Effingham County, and settled in as a family. In the neighborhood called Brothers Keeper Mobile Home Park, other residents recall EJ and Mary being extremely sweet and outgoing kids. EJ was a big fan of professional wrestling and would roughhouse and help a neighbor named Marvin Gills with yard work. Mary became close friends with Marvin's daughter, Daniela, and the girls would have sleepovers and watch Disney movies. The main thing Marvin remembers is that the children were always smiling. Well, up until Candace's mom, Kim Wright, and brother, Mark Anthony Wright, started coming around. Looking through Elwyn's old Facebook posts, according to him, EJ started having some behavioral problems during this time. He stated that EJ, who he refers to as Junior, hurt Mary and James, and that he couldn't touch him or punish him the way that he needed to be. Even though the children would have technically been Kim's step-grandchildren, who she hadn't even known for very long, for some reason she took it upon herself to discipline the kids. The neighbor Daniela recalled seeing Kim smack Mary upside the head and stated that James, who again had cerebral palsy, was made to sleep in bathtubs and closets when he'd been bad. Kim seemingly didn't get along with Elwyn either, and the cops were called several times due to altercations between them. For example, on one occasion, Kim called 911 and claimed that Elwyn had busted her lip after the family agitated him by waking him up. If you recall, he really didn't like being woken up, but Kim told the responding officer that she didn't put up with his nonsense like the rest of the family. She ultimately decided to not press charges, and the officer just told the family to try to get along. During another incident, Effingham County deputies arrested Candace's brother, Mark Anthony, who goes by Tony, for backhanding EJ in the face. Over the course of the next year, a case manager at the children's school called Sand Hill Elementary met with Mary and EJ regarding punishments at home. The caseworker wrote that Elwyn actually said, "The state of Georgia only requires me to feed, clothe, and give shelter to my children." DFCS opened a year-long investigation, and Elwyn and Candace were required to follow a case plan and complete parenting classes. By the end of the year, the caseworker wrote that the father has opened up and recognized the importance of loving his children, as if that was something that he wasn't aware of before. Regardless, DFCS closed the case, and they said they made significant improvements on the family and that the children were thriving. However, in reality, the children were not thriving, and Candace and Elwyn actually pulled EJ out of school to begin homeschooling in 2014. In 2015, another incident arose at the trailer, causing Elwyn to call 911 on EJ for misbehavior. When the officer arrived at the home, he spoke to EJ, who said he had gotten angry a lot because he didn't have any friends now that he was being homeschooled. When the officer talked to Elwyn, he said that he was pulled out of school for being a bully, and that he stole and tried to fight him when told to take a bath. The officer reportedly told EJ to listen to his parents and everything would be fine. In 2017, another child came forward and made a report to her school counselor regarding something she witnessed at the family's home a year prior. She said that while in their trailer, Kim took EJ to another room and she overheard the sounds of a belt hitting skin and screaming for over an hour. She also stated that Kim came out and asked her how many hits he should get, and since she was just afraid, she called out a random number. The beating continued until finally EJ came out of the room with red marks on his neck. Kim also made him pull down his pants to show the marks on his bottom. Later, he tried to show Elwyn and Candace his punishment for stealing. When asked about why she didn't report the incident earlier, the girl said that a lesson the students had about speaking up when you see abuse prompted her to tell the counselor. The school made a report to DCFS. However, they said that since the allegations were over a year old, they couldn't, or rather didn't have a responsibility to investigate. If they had, they may have learned that soon after this incident in November 2016, EJ told Mary's friend and neighbor Daniela that he was moving to his grandma's, aka Kim's. That was the last time anyone in the trailer park ever saw him. According to multiple Facebook posts, during this time, Elwin and Candace were struggling to find steady work. He did temp jobs at Winn-Dixie in a high school as a maintenance worker, and then finally got a more permanent maintenance position at the local Walmart. Not only that, but seasonally, he was hired to dress as the Walmart Santa Claus for children and their families to meet and take pictures with. However, by early 2018, Candace still wasn't working regularly, and they were having a hard time making ends meet. They ultimately decided to move in with Candace's mom, Kim, who lived one city over in Guyton. They actually lived directly across the street from Leilani Simon's grandmother. She's not related to this case. I thought it was just a strange coincidence. Anyway, by that point, for some reason, Elwyn and Candace decided to pull Mary out of school and began homeschooling her as well. In the home located on Rosebud Place, Kim, her boyfriend named Roy Prater, Elwyn, Candace, and the children were all living together. Candace's brother Tony also lived there periodically. However, he was said to frequently come and go. Neighbors on Rosebud said that the family was very standoffish. They had several aggressive dogs that made everyone keep their distance, and it was obvious they wanted to keep to themselves.
I hope they get what they deserve, but honestly, they don't deserve prison. I don't think the taxpayers should pay for them to be in prison and for them to be safeguarded. And like I said, they had mean dogs, and we've tried to reach out. I tried whenever her dogs attacked some ducks over there. It was her own ducks in a neighbor's yard, and she had to come over there and clean it up. And I asked her if I could help her, and she goes, "Leave me the hell alone." It's heartbreaking, because I would have took the child, and both of them, I would have been glad to take them and raise them and give them a good home.
They did notice Mary almost constantly doing yard work, and some have recalled her looking scared and thin. This seems to be a far cry from the once smiley little girl she was when they first moved to Georgia. In December of 2018, Tony was back staying at home on Rosebud when he reportedly overheard arguing between Elwyn and Kim coming from another room. He said he heard someone say that Mary was deceased, and after he thought about it, he realized he hadn't seen her for over a month. Tony decided to call his aunt named Joanne Gruber to tell her what he had heard. According to Joanne, he was hysterical on the phone, and she asked him if he wanted her to report what he heard to the police. Tony said yes, prompting Joanne to call and request a welfare check on Mary. Officers arrived at the home on Rosebud in the early morning hours of December 20th. At first, Elwyn told them that Mary had gone to visit her mother, but they asked him to come to the station for more formal questioning, and he agreed. At the time, he wasn't detained, but Elwyn agreed to let the officers search his phone, which is where they found a shocking photo of Mary, seemingly emaciated and standing nude next to a dog cage. From there, Elwyn made the horrifying admission that Mary was actually buried in the backyard. Not only that, but EJ was buried there too. With this new information, investigators immediately obtained search warrants and made their way to the home to begin excavating the yard. Not long after, they made the gruesome discovery in a muddy area just yards away from the back door. It was also clear that EJ had been there for much longer. Inside, James, who was at the time 11 years old, was found lying on the floor of a bedroom covered in a blanket but seemingly unharmed. However, according to an officer, James began muttering things about Mary being kept in a dog cage. Sure enough, a dog cage was located in the kitchen of the home, which matched the photo found in Elwyn's phone. By that point, He had obviously been formally detained, and when asked about the cage, he told officers that they put Mary in there as a form of punishment. Punishment for what is still unclear. Not that it really matters. There have been some reports of really insignificant things like her not exercising or stealing food, but even if she had done something horrible, nothing warrants putting a child in a dog cage. We're not talking about 1 or 2 times here either. The more Elwyn spoke to the police, the more they realized that every adult inside that home was involved in what took place. And one by one, they were all arrested as well. I want to go ahead and say that at this point there still hasn't been any trials, and there is a gag order on everyone involved in the case, so it's not fully clear what family members made what statements. But regardless, they collectively paint a picture of what happened to the children. It's believed that EJ died in late November of 2016, but since he was pulled out of school, no one reported him missing. After that, all of the abuse was focused on Mary. One officer did say that Elwyn admitted that Mary was zip-tied nude inside the dog cage so that she couldn't get out. It was also revealed that she was kept in there so long that her legs started to stay curled up, and they'd strap her to a ladder in an attempt to straighten her back out. She was also reportedly tased, starved, and instead of letting her out to bathe, they'd carry the entire dog cage to the bathroom to hose her down through the bars. When she was given food, one family member stated that they'd make her special separate meals and add things like rice vinegar to make it unpalatable. According to court documents, Elwin stated that he did bury his children and participated in the abuse, but it was only because Candace and Kim told him to. He also said that in November of 2016, he got a call from Candace and Kim saying that EJ had passed away, and by the time he got to the house, he found him dead in the bathroom. After Candace was arrested, she stated that on the day of Mary's death, Elwyn called her and told her to pick up some cement and trash bags, and that he had watched the light go out of her eyes. Other statements say she was hit in the head with a frying pan and that sexual assault may have been involved as well. And given that Elwyn molested his cousin as a kid, as well as some other witness statements we'll discuss later, I don't think that's very far-fetched. By the beginning of the new year in 2019, Elwyn, Candace, Kim, Roy, and Tony were all charged with murder, cruelty to children, and concealing the death of another in regards to Mary. All with the exception of Roy were given the same charges for EJ, which I think indicates that he wasn't in a relationship with Kim yet during the time he was killed. Tony has tried to say that he wasn't aware of the children being abused. However, given the fact that Mary and possibly EJ were being kept in a dog cage in the kitchen for at times over 24 hours a day, and that she was said to be emaciated and covered in bruises in that photo, no one believes that he was unaware. As with most cases that were getting their start in 2019 and 2020, the pandemic slowed the proceedings, giving the suspects a lot of time to think about how they were going to handle their case. It was announced that the state would be seeking the death penalty for all involved, which made making a plea deal even more enticing to get that taken off the table. Shockingly, Candace decided to plead guilty in exchange for life in prison without parole, and she also had to agree to testify against her mother, brother, and husband.
Candace Crocker pled guilty to 8 charges, including malice murder and concealing a death. That's in connection with the deaths of her 2 stepchildren. They're seen here. The bodies of 14-year-old Mary Crocker and her brother Elwin Crocker Jr. were found buried at the family's home in December of 2018. Candace Crocker will testify against the other defendants in the case. Her husband, Elwin Crocker, who faces 13 charges for the death of his own children. The other defendants are Candace Crocker's mother, Kimberly Wright, who's charged in the death of both children, and Candace Crocker's brother, Mark Wright, who was charged in the death of one child.
Roy also pleaded guilty but hasn't yet been sentenced. As for Kim, Elwyn, and Tony, they all have pleaded not guilty, which is ironic considering they seem to be the primary aggressors, at least based on the family's history. I mentioned that even now, at the end of 2024, there still haven't been any trials yet, and it's nearing the 6-year mark since Mary and EJ were found. Even though there was the pandemic, other issues have caused further delay, with both the state and defense claiming the other is dragging their feet. In July of this year, the state even filed a motion for the defendant's attorneys to be held in contempt, stating that they have not been complying with discovery deadlines. However, the defense is basically claiming that it's the state that hasn't provided all of their discovery, and in death penalty cases, the defense isn't required to provide mitigating discovery or evidence that would benefit their client before a verdict is reached. All of the legal jargon in the document is a bit confusing, but in a quote it says, "Under the Unified Appeal Procedure applicable to all death penalty cases, the defense has an absolute duty to continuously investigate possible mitigation evidence, and it must be permitted to do so in secret, because what may be useful evidence and mitigation could potentially be detrimental to the defense at the guilty/innocence phase. I think it makes sense that such high-stakes death penalty cases take longer than usual, but it really just seems like after 6 years, the judge would compel both sides to get everything together. Speaking of the judge, Judge F. Gates Peed was originally presiding over all 3 cases, but has since been replaced by Judge Michael Muldrew in Elwyn's case. In 2021, the defense filed a motion asking to prevent any ex parte communication between the state and the court, which is standard in death penalty cases. Ex parte basically means beneficial to one side or only having one side present. The state consented to that motion, but in 2023, it was discovered that the judge had an ex parte meeting with a state investigator, basically violating the order. Due to this, the judge was recused from Elwyn's case for violating the Code of Judicial Conduct, further delaying everything. Even though these main trials have been delayed, since they were arrested, more lawsuits have been filed against the Effingham County School District and even the Walmart where Elwyn worked. A representative for Mary's estate is suing the Effingham County school system for more than $3 million, which includes damages for mental and emotional suffering, as well as the full value of Mary's life. If you recall, I mentioned that back in 2017, a student reported what she had witnessed at the family home in 2016. By that point, EJ was already dead, but had the report been investigated, Mary's death could have likely been prevented. The lawsuit states that even though the school did inform DCFS, they were also required to report investigating authorities. It alleges that making a DCFS report alone does not satisfy the school district's protocol on abuse. However, the school system has stated that they followed their policies correctly. I know some counties only require school systems to report abuse to DCFS and then it's their responsibility to inform the police, but I'm not sure if this is the rule in Effingham County. The policy states to report to investigating authorities. This could potentially mean DCFS only and not police, because technically DCFS does investigate. At least they're supposed to. However, a representative for DCFS stated that they didn't do anything wrong either, but I'll let you be the judge of that statement. In addition, the Walmart in Rincon is being sued for not taking action after they were made aware of disturbing statements Elwyn made to a coworker. The lawsuit claims that in 2017, a fellow Walmart employee told the store manager that Elwyn was a PDF file. Elwin reportedly said that he wanted to continue being Santa Claus because he received sexual gratification from having little children sit on his lap. Another report regarding PDF file statements was made to the manager in 2018, but they apparently did nothing about it and continued to advertise the availability of Santa Claus at the store, whatever it takes to boost sales. It also claims that Elwyn brought Mary into the Walmart where she was said to appear disheveled, gaunt, undurfed, but that wasn't reported either. A quote from the lawsuit states, "By failing to follow its mandatory reporting duties and internal reporting policies, Walmart led to 11 more months of torture for Mary Crocker and her death in October of 2018. If Walmart had obeyed its internal policies and Georgia law, it would have prevented Mary Crocker's death. Therefore, Walmart is similarly liable for Mary's death." In addition, other court filings claim that Elwyn told a cellmate that he was a child, did not wear condoms, enjoyed playing Santa because he could touch children, and that he children as well. If these lawsuits are won, it's not made clear where the money would go. EJ and Mary's biological mother, Linda Denny, did petition the court to be appointed the administrator of their estate. However, the current court-appointed representative said Linda Denny is precluded from bringing a claim for the wrongful death of her children due to her abandonment of them. Also, as of 2022, Linda's boyfriend made a post stating that she was suffering from congestive heart failure, and it's not clear whether she's pulled through or not. Some people have hinted that EJ and Mary's surviving brother James, who is now living in foster care, should be the one to receive the money. Soon after their bodies were discovered, James's mother, Rebecca, spoke to the media and had this to say.
"I love them kids like they was my own. That was like my first time being a parent before having my own kids."
When news stations started airing the story of the siblings' death, word spread around Facebook. That's where Self found out.
I was scared. I screamed. I woke him up out of a dead sleep. I'm screaming, I'm crying, where's my child? And everything else. I couldn't, for the last couple of days, I could not sleep. I could not eat nothing.
Today, she's in Effingham County fighting for her son, who has cerebral palsy and muscular dystrophy. Self says Elwyn Crocker Sr. kept the boy from her all these years, telling court officials that she didn't want him.
I'm still confused on that. How you gonna lie to people and tell them I'm trying to kill my child whenever he was born, but yet you do this?
Now, Self says nothing is keeping her from her son.
Somebody better have some answers today. And I'm walking out of here today with my child. If not today, this state's not going to like me when I come back with lawyers.
However, as recently as this year, he is still living with his foster family, and for whatever reason, the state hasn't deemed Rebecca fit to regain custody. Some people have wondered why James wasn't met with the same fate as his siblings, and in Rebecca's opinion, it's because he was bringing in that monthly SSI check. So that seems where we're at with this case. As of now, official cause of death hasn't been released, but I'm sure we'll find that out, plus more horrific details during the trials. Given what we know came directly from initial interviews, I can't imagine what other evidence has been uncovered, and there's even been mentions of recordings. This is yet another example of why we need more laws to protect children who are homeschooled. Apparently, as of now, parents can just pull their children out of school, never to be seen again. And in isolation, they have no one to advocate for them. We saw the same thing in the Imani Moss case, and there's other similar cases we can cover in the future. However, the fact that there were 5 adults involved in this, and not one of them gained a conscience until after the children were dead, is almost unfathomable. Clearly, the state believes that everyone played a hand in the murders themselves, so it wasn't like some were just innocent bystanders. And when it comes to children, there are no innocent bystanders. Anyone who suspects mistreatment of a child has a duty to do something about it, but no one did that for EJ and Mary. In an interview with Elwyn's cousin, Israel Pattinson, he stated that he believes his cousin's proclivities may be a result of a family curse or something in their blood. This is because they are actually related to one of the South's most infamous serial killers, Pee Wee Gaskins, who was known as a rapist, murderer, cannibal, and admitted to killing nearly 100 people, and is a distant cousin of Elwyn's on his mother's side. Even though he was arrested in South Carolina, many of his murders took place in Georgia, so it's a case we can definitely cover in the future. Some of his crimes are eerily similar to what Elwyn did to his children, so maybe there's some sort of family correlation. That being said, I'd really like to know what excuse Candace, Kim, Roy, and Tony could possibly conjure up, since Candace has agreed to testify against them. I'm sure we'll be hearing more about their side of the story. But at the end of the day, all that really matters is getting justice for these innocent children.
And it's hard for me to look out my door because I can see the graves from my door, from my front door. And it's sad, and we have to live out here.
And sometimes when you look, do you think, what could I have done?
Yeah, all the time. All of us that's running through everybody's mind out here, I believe.
Even though basically all of the systems and adults in their lives failed Mary and EJ, their community came together and hosted a memorial service in their honor. It's just unfortunate that they didn't have this many people behind them until it was too late. I'll make sure to keep an eye out for any trial updates, but until then, please let me know what you think about this case, and until next time, stay safe.